Hello and welcome to the Partnership Online video to support the Year 1 school experience that's running in this spring term of 2016. My name is Cara Broadhurst and I'm the BA Ed Assistant Director, and I'm going to be talking you through some of the mentoring requirements and procedures for the Year 1 school experience. If you haven't mentored for us before, this will be particularly useful for you. A few quick notes about terminology before I get stuck in. First of all, our students or trainees are known as Reading Partnership Teachers, and as such we refer to them as RPTs throughout all the documentation that you might read. The other acronym you might need to know is BB, which stands for Blackboard. That's our online learning platform. All of the documents that I refer to in this presentation are on Blackboard for download. The password and username that you need are the same. You need to type in IOE Partner 1 in order to gain access. I think it's important to start by placing the Year 1 placement in some context. So our Year 1s have done a serial placement, that's where they visit once a week in schools for 13 days since they started the programme back in October. This therefore is their first block placement of the 3 that they'll do on this programme, and they're with you for 4 weeks. It is a paired placement, and that is a deliberate decision we make as we believe that the paired dynamic usually allows them to support one another, work together, help each other reflect, and they also to some extent take on some of the mentoring role for each other, albeit from a different perspective to the perspective you'll give. At the back of the school experience guide, which I'll talk you through shortly, there is actually an appendix about paired placement dynamics, and it contains lots of good ideas for how pairs can work together in more innovative ways to support each other. I think the bottom line thing about context that needs reinforcing is that there's almost a contradictory message at this Year 1 stage. We need to be very understanding of the fact that these RPTs are in the very early stages of their programme. They've only been with us for a term and a half, and as I say, I've only spent 13 days in school. So for some of them, knowledge of professional workplace and how education works and the expectations within that, that knowledge is limited. They have had input about what professionalism means and the basic expectations in terms of punctuality and dress code and things like that, but there is still quite a lot of room for error, and so we need to be understanding of that fact and the fact that when they start putting their pedagogy into practice and planning lessons and attempting to manage groups of children, they have only had a limited amount of input. However, on the other hand, this is a 3-year degree programme. They only have 2 further block placements after this one, and they need to be, we need to be confident that they are fully effective NQTs when they leave us. And so we have to have expectations that are appropriate for that level. We have to show that they have made some progress and achieved to a good Year 1 level before we move them on in Year 2. One way of helping you understand what those expectations look like is to share with you which standards and which teachers' standards and which areas they've had more input in than others. So in their training thus far, they've had quite a lot of focus on planning. What does a lesson plan look like? What does effective learning look like? How do you ensure learning, and things around that area. And that particularly prepares them to begin to work towards Standard 4 of the teacher's standards. They've also had quite a lot of input on behaviour and what it means to be a teacher, to stand in front of a class, to have presence, to be able to act as the teacher, and similarly the strategies that they might and routines they might employ to basic level to manage classroom behaviour. Other areas of the standards are going to have more specific teaching in later parts of the course. So for example, assessment will be specifically addressed in their sessions next year, as will differentiation and SEN provision. So those things are, although they have been touched on and begun to be explored here in year one, there will be further work done with them on those later. So the expectations for things like that are subtly different. We do produce grading criteria statements to help you see what the expectations are across all of the 9 standards for year ones. I'll show you those in a little bit later on in this video. The overall message is, because we have these grading criteria statements with specific year 1 statements. The idea is that we grade the trainees, the RPTs, against where they're at in their training, i.e. what we would expect of a year 1, not against experienced teachers. As I said a little while ago, we have made the profession's high expectations clear, but this area of their personal and professional conduct is probably one of the areas we need to be most empathetic about when we're responding to how the RPTs are in school. For example, lack of confidence and keenness to show that they actually can do something or know something or are worthy of your note will play a part in how they present themselves. And sometimes trainers can actually come across as overconfident because they're so keen to show what they can do. Equally, lack of communication can lead to problems, particularly misunderstandings, when trainees don't perhaps like to ask the additional question, they don't like to bother their mentor, and so you're unaware that they are feeling that they don't know something or that they need more input with something. And so both those things I think should be borne in mind when dealing with year 1 RPTs. Okay, I'm now going to talk about the mentor role specifically. You have a mentor guide, a mentor handbook in your pack. It will be a coloured document stapled together. It's really the most important document, I suppose, for you. It includes a checklist of the tasks that you need to do in order to support your RPT on a week-by-week basis, and we hope that that's clear and allows you to tick things off as you go along. It does also include appendices designed to support you in the mentoring skills of giving feedback and giving support, and I'll show you on those appendices in a few slides' time. The other coloured stapled guide in your pack is the school experience guide. That's the one that's written with the RPTs as the audience. So it tells them what they need to do and what lessons they need to teach and all that kind of thing. So if you look at that as well in conjunction with your mentor guide, that should make you feel confident that you know what's what. The 4-week experience is split into 2 sections. There is the diagnostic time, which is the first week of the placement. That's really a time for them to observe you and your class, to get to know everybody, collect information about the class and the school. So obviously that starts on the visit, the pre-visit day on Friday the 26th and carries on into the first week. In that time, there is a list of things on your mentor checklist about that, but the really key 3 are sharing of some assessment data and pupil targets. We all know that you can't teach children unless you know where they're starting from, and so sharing with your RPTs what kind of levels your children are working at, which groups and expectations there are in the class. Sharing the planning. They're going to be working with you and planning some lessons for the next 3 weeks, so they need to know what the topics are, what the unit plans are focusing on, so they can begin thinking and researching that. Finally, we ask for them to have some inductions one into the phonics scheme that the school uses and the other the mathematics or calculation policy. It saves misunderstanding later because there is so much variation in the different phonics schemes out there and the mathematic calculation policies, if they know how your school does it rather than any other training that they've had. There is then the block part of the placement. So there is the 3-week block, and really we would define the mentor role during that block as having 4 strands. So I'm going to just talk you through those 4 strands. The first strand is the weekly meeting. So we ask for one planned weekly meeting, best held near the end of the week, where you meet with the RPTs one after the other if possible, so it's as confidential as possible, just for 30 minutes each, followed by bringing everybody together, all 3 of you, to look ahead to the following week. You do receive double payment as a school for taking a pair of RPTs rather than a singular RPT. So if PPA time or non-contact time is needed to be used for this meeting, that there should be allowance for that in the payment. As I say, you're going to be reviewing with each RPT individually how they've got on that week, as well as looking ahead and planning next week's timetable and observations with both of them. There is a form called the weekly reflection form that we ask you to fill in during that meeting. Please do that. As in, don't feel you have to go off and fill it in after the meeting. We have no desire to, give anyone extra work or duplication. If you make notes on the form while you're meeting with the RPT, agreeing, oh yes, you've done that well this week, or let me just remind you, I'll put that down because you did that, and let's think about your targets. Then it's finished by the time you finish the meeting. I'm just going to share that form with you. Okay, so it is this one. So as you can see, after basic things at the top like names, where you're filling it in the second week, there's a space to put the targets from the previous week, the teaching targets that you agreed with the RPT the previous week, and actually discuss whether they have been achieved. Now they may be ongoing, it may be that progress has been made, but that you need to record that they are ongoing because they're still working towards those. Then there is a space for the RPT to write a reflective statement about how they feel they've got on that week. They do that after the meeting. But here on the screen now is the box for you to put your comments about their week. Bullet points are absolutely fine. Just bear in mind that you are trying to help them show where they've had impact, trying to help them show where they've had impact on pupils in particular. And if you can link it to individual standards, that's helpful, particularly for year ones who are inexperienced. And then of course there is the space for new targets at the end of this week. What can they take forward to next week? We suggest a maximum of 3, so it's not overwhelming for anybody. The final box is essential that you do actually highlight something. There are 2 questions. Is the RPT making progress in responding to feedback? That's key so that they can remain motivated even if there is discussion about whether they're actually working at the appropriate level. It's very important to ensure that they understand that their effort and progress is being recognised. And the other thing is the RPT making appropriate progress for this school experience? And so you need to be agreeing yes or no at this time. Okay, so I'm just going to return to the presentation, and I think I've said really everything there is to say about the weekly meeting, because I've already said about using the end of it to look ahead to the following week. The second aspect of the mentor role is to observe the trainees. We ask for 1 written lesson observation per week per RPT, so you could watch them team teach and have 2 feedback sheets in front of you and try and record on both at the same time, and some people find that that's perfectly manageable. Others prefer to choose a time when they're both teaching separately and observe them separately. For your observations, can you please use the feedback form, which is, there's an example in your pack. It's the same for every subject except phonics, which of course has its own because of its individual prompts. And we would like to ask you to take the time to read the lesson feedback appendix. So as I said near the beginning of the presentation, in your mentor guide there are examples of filled in feedback sheets. I'm just going to show you those as well. Here we are. So they're actually, I'm just going to scroll up so you can see which appendix they're part of. So they're Appendix 2, and Appendix 2 starts with some guidelines on what we believe is effective lesson feedback. So as you can see, I'm just scrolling through our suggestions. Following those guidelines, there are then 3 example filled in sheets. This first one is for a Year 1 RPT, so maybe the most useful to you. As you can see, the column on the left hand side has had the teacher's standards that each statement relates to noted down. We don't do that for our more experienced RPTs, but for Year 1s who are still getting to know the teacher's standards, we as tutors do include the standard on the side, and we ask that you do the same to help them. And as you can see, this is how the rest of the form looks after you, if I just scroll up again, after you've put your description of the lesson and what you saw. You are asked to talk about what learning was achieved, as that's obviously a key way of measuring impact, and to also tick or highlight which of those 3 judgments you would make on the lesson. Please do ensure that you do tick one of those boxes. It's absolutely fine, of course, to handwrite these. I handwrite most of mine still when I come in to visit. It's just obviously in a handbook they've been typed up. Let's go back to the presentation. I think if I had to sum up how we approach feedback here at Reading, I would say we always start by remarking on the positive. There is always a positive aspect to a lesson, usually many, and actually remembering that some of the things that seem to us simple the trainee is doing, to them might be something they've worked really quite hard on. But after remarking on the positive, do remember to focus on the pupil learning. That's after all why we're here. And in the end, if your feedback can kickstart some RPT thinking, can really get the cogs turning about, well, why did I do that? And what would be a better way to do that? Then that's really good feedback. The third aspect of your role is to support the RPT. And I particularly just want to say about planning in respect to this. So RPTs in Year 1 do supported planning. A good model is to share and discuss your plans with the RPT, so whether that's last year's plans or a unit plan for the week. Then they can go away and draft their own lesson plan, having talked through all those ideas with you, and then you can feed back on that lesson plan before they teach the lesson. They have been asked to share those with you in good time before any lessons that are due to be taught. In the end, the message is that wherever an RPT is performing on the scale, whether you think they are performing above what you'd expect for a Year 1 or below, in the end we have to start supporting them from where they are at, just as we would with any child, to get them to make progress. That really fits in with our principles of mentoring. That bright red card in your pack is an IOE-wide resource that we developed. So it's not just for our BA Ed programme, but it's used in all our programmes across our institute for how we approach mentoring. On the back of it, you'll see on the flip side, it's got all the teacher standards listed out, so it's also got a practical use. You can have it there in your folder to refer to when you're observing. Finally, the fourth aspect of the mentor role is the formal assessment. There are only 2 formal assessment points. The first one is the interim assessment, so that's halfway through, so it's the end of after the diagnostic week and the first week of the block, when they've been with you a fortnight. You'll be sent a link to complete a very short online survey, basically letting us know, is your RPT making sufficient progress, and a chance to put any comments. The lengthier assessment is the assessment of progress document. That's available on Blackboard, You need to fill it in electronically in the final few days after discussing the RPT's progress with the tutor when they come for a visit, and also looking at the RPT's evidence log and considering everything that you know about them for the placement. And you email that to us and to the RPT so that they have a copy. In terms of that final formal assessment on the AOP, it is a responsibility, and as we talked at the beginning, or I talked at the beginning, knowing where to assess in a year one, what to expect of them is challenging, so needs to be carefully considered. The grading criteria statements have been produced to support you in that consideration. They are on the AOP, on the electronic document, but we do have them separately, again on Blackboard if you prefer to download them separately. I'll just show them to you now. So they are here. So the first standard, standard 1, is on the first page, and as you can see, this here, where I'm now currently circulating, yes, the cursor, is the year 1 statement. That statement is what we would expect of an average year 1, and a year 1 who is meeting the year 1 standards. So as you'll see when you get to the AOP, the grades we offer are W, which is working towards, M, which is meeting, and E, which is exceeding. So if your RPT is doing the things in the meeting box, they get an M grade. If they are exceeding what's in this box, already going beyond it, or doing so very independently, or innovating on it, or even beginning to move into the year 2 box, then they get an E. And if they are not yet quite there, perhaps you can highlight some of the things in this box but not all, then they get a W to show they are working towards the standard. They only get a fail grade in the very rare occurrence that they are not making progress at all towards that particular standard, that feedback has been given repeatedly and they're not making progress despite different support being given. You can then see what the year 2 expectations are, and you can actually see for the same standard how we break down the year 3 expectations into 3 grades. And then the document simply carries on with the next standard laid out in exactly the same way. I hope you find that useful. So I've already said about the gradings, and at the end of the form you're able to give the overall grade for the SE, which is the modal average of the 9 grades that you've given. Just a couple of final messages before I finish. One is about the standard booster form. If your RPT is working at grade W for any standard, then we do need extra support to be given to them to enable them to try and meet that standard by the end of the placement. So at the interim point, when you're filling in that survey, you need to be thinking, are there going to be any grade W's? Am I worried about that this trainee is actually still developing in one area or another? The tutor will ask you the same thing when they visit. The standard booster form is on Blackboard, and there's an example one in the mentor guide as well. And it's designed for you and the tutor in fact, to clearly outline what and decide and agree what strategies and support would help the RPT, and to write some success criteria down if that's going to help them know what they have to do in order to reach the standard. It's absolutely crucial that we have documented evidence that upholds all our assessments, whether they're going to excellent assessments or weaker assessments. So having visible targets, having a booster form in place, and having appropriate boxes ticked on feedback is very important. Just a quick note about 2 subjects. Phonics, first of all. Obviously we know that RPTs need to be flexible while they're in school with you. All sorts of things happen in schools, either that we anticipate or don't anticipate, and they have to be flexible. But in terms of phonics, that's the subject that we would urge you to ensure that they get as much experience with as possible. Next year they'll be on a Key Stage 2 placement, and in their 3rd year they get to opt for the one they prefer. So for some of them this will be the only Key Stage 1 placement they get. Therefore, can you please make sure one of your formal observations that you do is of a phonics lesson. If you are in year 1, you could talk about how you're preparing the children for the screening check and your views on that. If you're in year 2, you could talk about what the impact was or wasn't following the last year's check for those children. PE, the children, RPTs, are not expected to teach PE without a qualified teacher present. In fact, they're not allowed to. They are not expected to teach a full PE lesson during this placement because of the training they've had thus far. But even when they are doing small parts of the lesson, there needs to be a qualified teacher present. So although you might pop out of the room during other lessons, that needs to be not the case with PE. Finally, we have the challenge tasks. There are a few school-based tasks in their guidebook, which all of them have to do, and you sign off that they've done them. On the next page are optional challenge tasks, designed to allow those trainees who aspire to really push themselves and try more challenging things to have a go at doing those. There is no ceiling. If any of them want to have a go, please do just talk to them about how it might work and how they could best go about it. What you need to do now, if you haven't had a chance already, is to ask your RPT to show you their personal statement, which has some targets on it. That will help you gain a flavour of what sort of trainee teacher they are and what their hopes and fears are. Please also find out from your RPT who their supervising tutor is. The tutor should be in contact with you because obviously although you missed them at partnership training, they have your contact details now. However, if they haven't managed to get in contact with you, it might be a good idea to get in contact with them. And finally, do take a look around on Blackboard. I presume that you accessed Blackboard successfully because you found the link to this video. So do have a look around, particularly your mentor folder. All the forms mentioned already are in that folder. I'd like to wish you every success with your mentoring experience, and thank you very much for watching.